how to argue like a gentleman. Let's dive headfirst into a tough topic that many of us dread: arguing. Did you know that arguing doesn't have to be a recipe for disaster? In fact, with the right mindset and approach, you can learn to argue like a true gentleman. It's all too easy for disagreements to spiral out of control, leading to bitterness, hatred, and chaos. And that's exactly why we're here today, to give you some tips and tricks on how to navigate arguments with grace and class. So sit tight, buckle up, and get ready to learn how to argue like a true gentleman. Let's face it, arguing is a part of life. We're all bound to disagree with someone at some point, and that's okay. But here's the thing, arguments don't have to be fiery, explosive, and dramatic. In fact, some arguments can be as simple as calmly stating your opinion while someone else calmly disagrees. Sure, there are those intense arguments that leave you feeling like you've been sliced to pieces, but those are few and far between. At the end of the day, the goal of an argument should be to express your point of view without tearing the other person down. And that, my friend, brings us to tip number 1. A gentleman argues fairly. When it comes to arguing, playing fair is crucial, especially if you want to be seen as a true gentleman. There's nothing worse than getting into a disagreement with someone who immediately starts pushing your buttons and hitting below the belt. Not only is it a surefire way to lose the argument, but it's also downright disrespectful. A real gentleman knows that he can make his point without resorting to cheap shots or personal attacks. He listens to what the other person has to say, respectfully disagrees if needed, and focuses on attacking the point, not the person. After all, what does calling someone a slut have to do with the migration habits of the monarch butterfly? Absolutely nothing. So, if you want to argue like a true gentleman, remember to play fair, keep it dignified, and attack the point, not the person. 2. A gentleman doesn't bring up the past, but women do. One thing that sets true gentlemen apart from the rest is their ability to let go of the past. While women may have a tendency to bring up old grudges and past mistakes during an argument, a gentleman knows better than to do so. After all, if you've already forgiven someone for something they did in the past, why bring it up now? Not only does it distract from the actual issue at hand, but it can also make the other person feel like you're holding a grudge or not truly over what happened. So if you want to argue like a gentleman, put the past to bed and focus on the present. It's the only way to truly move forward. 3. A gentleman is open to new ideas. He's not close-minded. A true gentleman is always open to new ideas and is never closed-minded. He approaches discussions with an open mind and listens attentively to what others have to say. When a gentleman is wrong, he has the courage to admit it and apologize if necessary. But there are times when a gentleman knows that agreeing to disagree is the best way forward. In a heated debate, both sides might not be able to convince the other, and that's okay. Knowing when to walk away is a sign of maturity and true gentlemanliness. All of these are very important, and make sure not to forget them. In the end, an argument is an exchange of diverging or opposite views, but it doesn't have to be heated or angry, so let's go over some ground rules of arguing like a gentleman. First, you have to be willing to have an exchange of views. If you declare your position and refuse to budge, it is pointless to continue. Being open to the possibility of being wrong is a crucial trait of a true gentleman. You can't hold on to your opinions as if they were the ultimate truth. It's impossible for any man to be right all the time, and if you think you are, then you're likely a narcissistic and unbearable person. No one would consider you a gentleman, so don't be that guy who thinks he knows it all and refuses to acknowledge his mistakes. Be open to new ideas and to having your ideas questioned. It may not feel comfortable at first, but with practice, it will get easier and feel less personal. Stay calm because raising your voice or using mocking or aggressive tones should be avoided, as the intent behind them is to manipulate rather than calmly engage with your conversation partner. It's not just what you say that matters when you're arguing like a gentleman. Your body language is just as important. If you want to come across as confident and respectful, Make sure to maintain eye contact and avoid any defensive gestures like crossing your arms or rolling your eyes. Remember, your body language can speak volumes about your intentions and attitude, so pay attention to how you're presenting yourself during an argument. No name-calling or personal insults. Don't bring unrelated subjects into the conversation. This is an attempt to derail the discussion away from the original topic and re-engage control over the direction it is going. Finally, you stick to the rules of gentlemanly conduct even if your conversation partner doesn't. You recognize that you can only control your actions and call out the actions of others, but not everyone will be willing to play by the same rules. A gentleman takes the high road. How to argue with your spouse or significant other. When it comes to arguing with your spouse or significant other, it's a different ball game compared to arguing with colleagues or friends. You can't just avoid it and the stakes are higher. Your partner is likely the closest person to you, so it's crucial to communicate effectively and fairly. Winning at all costs can be even more damaging in this scenario. As a gentleman, it's important to master the skill of productive arguing with your significant other. The gentlemanly techniques listed earlier are just as applicable in spousal conflict. However, given the emotional nature of this type of argument, there are additional things to avoid. The topics may range from mundane chores to life-altering decisions, but also involve how your actions and words affect your partner's emotions. John Gottman, a 40-year veteran of relationship studies, has observed that he can predict if a couple will break up with 91% accuracy based on the presence of just 4 main indicators: contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Here are the rules. Don't dismiss the concerns of your spouse or refuse to engage in a conversation. Don't use threats like "I'm divorcing you" during an argument because threats tip the scales of power unfairly in your favor and it makes your partner feel insecure about bringing up legitimate issues. Don't bring up old fights, past transgressions that were resolved, or bring up a different concern for the first time. Keep the focus on the topic at hand. Don't exaggerate the actions of your spouse, saying something like, "You do this every time." Avoid actions of contempt at all costs, which are especially poisonous. Eye-rolling, name-calling, and mockery are all examples of what to avoid because they show how far you're willing to go to dismiss the feelings and concerns of your spouse. Don't offer a fake or defensive apology if one is in order. Apologize properly. "I'm sorry you feel that way" is not an apology because you are avoiding responsibility for what caused the other person to be hurt. It's their fault that they took your words and were hurt by it, not yours for having said them. Don't criticize the person, but rather the action. Implying the other person is somehow bad can have long-term negative repercussions for your relationship beyond this one argument. This brings us to the end of today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure to hit that bell button so you can get notified whenever there's a new video with tips on how to look suave.